They used corn on their butts, rough, dried corn cobs. And that's not even the worst part. Look, I'm about to ruin every single cowboy movie you've ever loved because Hollywood has been lying to you. Those rugged cowboys riding into the sunset, they were covered in dirt, sweat, and they hadn't wiped their ass properly in 3 months. And the method they used to clean themselves, it's so disgusting, so unbelievably primitive that you're gonna thank God you were born in the 21st century. Stay with me because we're about to go down a rabbit hole of frontier bathroom horror that includes snake attacks, catalog pages, deadly diseases, and one outlaw who literally got arrested with his pants down. And I promise you, every single thing I'm about to tell you is historically documented and absolutely real. Before we get into the really nasty stuff, and trust me, we're getting there, you need to understand something crucial. Going to the bathroom in the Wild West could literally kill you. I'm not exaggerating. More cowboys died from bathroom-related incidents and diseases than died in gunfights. Let that sink in. The OK Corral, 26 seconds, 3 dead. Dysentery on the Chisholm Trail, thousands dead. So buckle up because this is gonna get wild. The corn cob reality. Let's just rip the band-aid off right now. The #1 tool cowboys used to wipe corn cobs. Yes, you heard that right. Those same corn cobs you see at farmers markets looking all cute and rustic, cowboys shove those up their business end for cleaning purposes. But here's the technique, and this is documented in actual frontier journals. You'd use 3 corn cobs. First, a rough dried one to do the heavy scraping. Then a second, slightly softer one to get what the first one missed. And finally, if you were fancy, you'd use a third one that had been soaking in water to smooth everything out. Cowboys literally kept buckets of corn cobs soaking in water for this exact purpose. Imagine being the new guy on the cattle drive, and someone hands you a bucket and says, "Go soak these." You have no idea what they're for. You find out pretty quick, and here's where it gets absolutely insane. There was a hierarchy of corn cobs. The dried red ones were considered rougher and more effective. The yellow ones were softer and better for, quote, delicate situations. I cannot believe I'm telling you this, but cowboys had preferences for their butt corn. There's a recorded interview from 1893 with an old cowboy who said, and I quote, "A good corn cob was worth more than a silver dollar on the trail." Let that mental image haunt you. But wait, it gets worse. Now, you might be thinking, okay, corn cobs are gross, but at least they're natural. Oh, you sweet summer child. Let me tell you what else cowboys used. Catalog pages, specifically the Sears Roebuck catalog. This thing was so commonly used as toilet paper that when Sears switched from rough paper to glossy, coated paper in the early 1900s, they got thousands of complaint letters. People were genuinely angry because the new glossy paper didn't absorb anything, it just smeared everything around. Sears actually had to address this in their marketing. They published responses basically saying, "We understand some customers use the old catalog for alternative purposes, but we assure you the product descriptions are still excellent." That's corporate speak for, "We know you wiped your ass with our catalog, but please keep buying from us." But here's the thing about catalog pages. At least you had to wait for the catalog to arrive. What did cowboys use before that? Leaves. But not just any leaves. You had to know your leaves, because if you grabbed the wrong one, you were in for a world of hurt. Poison ivy, poison oak, those grew everywhere on the frontier. Imagine you're done with your business. You grab what looks like a nice soft leaf, and 6 hours later, your entire rear end is covered in burning, itching blisters, and you're on horseback for 12 hours a day. For the next 3 weeks, there are documented cases of cowboys who had to ride standing up in their stirrups for days because they used the wrong leaf. The other cowboys would mock them mercilessly, which is just adding insult to literal injury. The bathroom death trap. Okay, now let's talk about why going to the bathroom could kill you in the Wild West. And I'm not talking about embarrassment, I'm talking actual death. #1 killer, snakes. Outhouses were basically 5-star hotels for rattlesnakes. Think about it, dark, protected from weather, and full of rodents that came to feed on the waste. Rattlesnakes would curl up in the pit below, and when you sat down, your most vulnerable body parts were dangling right above them. There's a documented case from Dodge City in 1882. A guy sits down to do his business. Rattlesnake in the pit gets disturbed, strikes him right in the, well, use your imagination. He was dead within 4 hours. After that incident, people in Dodge started carrying lanterns to check for snakes before sitting down, even in broad daylight. But snakes weren't the only problem. Black widow spiders loved outhouses. They'd build webs under the seat, and if you sat down wrong, you'd get bitten on your thighs or worse. A black widow bite on your butt? That's not just painful. That's a 2-week recovery where you can't sit, can't ride, basically can't function. And here's something that'll make your skin crawl. In the summer heat, the outhouse pit would produce methane gas. That's right, the decomposing waste would create flammable gas. There There are multiple recorded incidents of people lighting a match or a cigarette in an outhouse and causing an explosion. I am not making this up. People literally blew up outhouses with themselves inside. The disease nightmare. But you know what killed more people than snakes, spiders, and exploding outhouses combined? Diseases from contaminated water. Here's how it worked. Idiot settlers would dig their well in one spot and their outhouse 20 feet away. Human waste would seep into the groundwater. Everyone drinks the water. Everyone gets sick. Everyone dies. This happened over and over and over again because people were dumb and didn't understand germ theory yet. Cholera was the big killer, and cholera didn't mess around. You'd go from healthy to dead in hours. It would start with diarrhea so severe you'd lose gallons of fluid, then vomiting, then your organs would start shutting down, and there was no treatment. You either survived or you didn't. There's a recorded incident from a wagon train in 1849. Someone dug a latrine too close to the water source. Within 2 weeks, 37 people were dead from cholera. That's an entire wagon train wiped out because of one badly placed bathroom hole. Dysentery was even more common. It was basically bloody diarrhea that would drain all your strength and fluids. Cowboys called it the scours, and it was so prevalent on cattle drives that it was almost considered normal. But it weakened you so much that combined with the physical demands of driving cattle, it killed strong men regularly. The U.S. Army actually did studies on this because frontier forts were constantly battling disease outbreaks. Fort Laramie in Wyoming got so bad that at one point 20% of the soldiers were sick simultaneously. They finally figured out the problem was the latrine placement, but not before hundreds had died. The cattle drive nightmare. Now let's talk about the reality of bathroom breaks on a cattle drive, because this is where Hollywood's version completely falls apart. You're on horseback for 16 hours a day. You're moving 2,000 cattle across 1,000 miles. You're eating nothing but beans, salt, pork, and more beans. Your stomach is a ticking time bomb. When nature calls, you've got maybe 5 minutes to handle it. You fall back from the herd, find some brush if you're lucky, drop your pants, and do your business as fast as humanly possible. No privacy, no dignity. The other cowboys can probably see you, and you're using whatever's available. Grass, leaves, your own sock if you're desperate. But here's the real problem. If you take too long, you lose sight of the herd. Getting separated on the open prairie was deadly. Hostile tribes, outlaws, wild animals, getting lost, all real dangers. So you had to be fast. And at night, even worse. You're on watch, riding around the herd to keep them calm. If you need to go, you have to do it quietly, because if you spook the cattle, they'll stampede. A nighttime stampede could kill everyone. So you'd quietly slip away, handle your business in complete darkness, and pray you didn't step on a rattlesnake or sit on a cactus. There's a story about a greenhorn cowboy on his first drive who didn't know the rules. He wandered too far from camp at night to find privacy, made too much noise, and spooked the herd. The resulting stampede killed 3 steers and nearly killed 2 cowboys. That greenhorn was never allowed on another drive. One bathroom trip ended his cowboy career. The sagebrush incident. Speaking of greenhorns, let me tell you the single most painful bathroom story from the frontier. New cowboy, first cattle drive, doesn't know what he's doing. He wanders off to handle his business and looks around for something to clean up with. He sees sagebrush, looks soft, looks fine. He uses it. Here's what he didn't know. Sagebrush has tiny, almost microscopic thorns, hundreds of them, and he just rubbed them all over his most sensitive areas. Within an hour, he was in agony. His entire rear end was covered in tiny thorns that were almost impossible to remove. Every movement was torture. Every time he sat in the saddle, it was like sitting on needles. This went on for a week. The other cowboys thought it was hilarious. They called him Cactus Ass for the rest of his life. He never lived it down, and every new cowboy after that was specifically warned, don't use the sagebrush. Winter hell. You think summer was bad? Let me tell you about frontier bathroom situations in winter. Picture this. It's Montana in January, 20 degrees below zero. You're in a cabin snowed in for weeks. You need to use the outhouse, which is buried in snow 50 feet from your door. You bundle up in every piece of clothing you own. You open the door to a wall of freezing wind. You trudge through waist-deep snow to reach the outhouse. You open the door, and the wooden seat is so cold that sitting on it is like sitting on ice. Your skin sticks to it, and you have to be fast, because if you stay out too long, you'll get frostbite on body parts you really don't want frostbitten. There's a famous story from 1888 about a Dakota Territory blizzard. A man left his cabin to use the outhouse. The snow was so thick, he got disoriented. He froze to death 50 feet from his own front door. He just couldn't find his way back. After that, smart frontier families would run a rope from their house to the outhouse during winter. You'd hold on to the rope so you could find your way back in whiteout conditions. That's right, you needed a safety rope to safely take a dump. Some cowboys wintering in lined shacks would just keep a bucket in the cabin for nighttime use. In the morning, they'd throw the contents as far from the cabin as possible. Not pleasant, but better than dying of exposure. The outlaw who got caught with his pants down. Here's a story that's both hilarious and true. Dirty Tom Ketchum was an outlaw running from a posse in New Mexico in 1899. He'd been riding hard for days, and nature finally called at the worst possible moment. He stopped behind some rocks, dropped his pants, and started doing his business. That's when the posse caught up with him. They found him literally squatting with his pants around his ankles. He couldn't run. He couldn't draw his gun. He couldn't do anything except surrender. They arrested him without firing a single shot. His own gang members mocked him about it during his trial. The newspapers wrote about it. He became famous not for his crimes, but for getting arrested while taking a dump. He was eventually hanged, and I guarantee his last thoughts were, "I should have held it." Women had it worse. Now we need to talk about something that rarely gets mentioned. What women went through on the frontier. Everything I've told you so far, women dealt with all of that plus menstruation with no modern products. Think about that for a second. No pads, no tampons, just cloth rags that had to be washed and reused. On a wagon train where water was scarce and privacy didn't exist, women would have to sneak away to wash their rags in streams, then hide them in their wagons to dry, hoping nobody noticed. There are diary entries from women on the Oregon Trail describing the humiliation and difficulty of managing their periods while traveling. One woman wrote about having to wash her rags while pretending to fetch water, terrified that the men would see and know what she was doing. And pregnancy, childbirth, women gave birth in covered wagons and sod houses with no running water, no sterilization, no real medical care. Many died from infections that today would be prevented with basic hygiene. The maternal mortality rate on the frontier was 30 times higher than it is today. The Fancy Lady from Philadelphia. Here's a story that perfectly captures how different frontier life was from city life. A wealthy woman from Philadelphia came west to visit her rancher brother in Texas. She was horrified by the outhouse and insisted on having a chamber pot brought to her room. Fine, no problem. But here's what she didn't understand. Someone had to empty that chamber pot every day. She kept her door locked for privacy, and nobody could get in to empty it. After a week of this, the smell became so overwhelming that her brother had to break down her door. Inside, they found a chamber pot that hadn't been emptied in 7 days in Texas summer heat. The smell was so bad that people evacuated the hotel. She was so mortified that she left on the next train back to Philadelphia and never spoke to her brother again. 1 week in the West, and she literally destroyed a family relationship over bathroom issues. Bear in the outhouse. Multiple, and I mean multiple. Frontier homesteaders recorded incidents of bears breaking into outhouses. Think about how terrifying that would be. You're sitting on the outhouse seat, doing your business, completely vulnerable. Suddenly you hear scratching, then breaking wood. Then a bear comes crashing through the door or the wall. One Montana homesteader wrote about shooting a bear through the outhouse wall while he was still sitting inside. He killed the bear, but now his outhouse had bear blood all over it and bullet holes that let in wind and rain. He had to build a new one. Another story involves a woman who was in the outhouse when a bear tried to get in. She was screaming for help while her husband ran out with his rifle. The bear got spooked and ran off, but she refused to use that outhouse ever again. She'd rather risk exposure in winter than face another possible bear encounter. The Gold Rush disaster. California gold rush camps were bathroom hell on earth. Thousands of men living in close quarters, everyone focused on finding gold, nobody caring about sanitation. Some camps became so filthy that disease killed more miners than mining accidents. There's a documented case from 1850 where a camp lost 40% of its population to cholera in 1 month because nobody had bothered to dig proper latrines away from the water source. The camp literally became a death trap. Men would be healthy one day and dead the next. Bodies piled up faster than they could bury them. And the whole thing could have been prevented if someone had just dug the toilets in the right place. Survivors described the smell as so overpowering that you could smell the camp from a mile away. The ground was soaked with human waste. Flies covered everything, and men still kept coming because they were blinded by gold fever. The catalog wars. Let's get back to the Sears catalog situation because it's actually fascinating. When Sears introduced glossy paper, rural customers were furious. They wrote letters complaining that the new paper was useless for important purposes. Some people canceled their orders in protest. Sears tried to be diplomatic about it, but Montgomery Ward, their main competitor, saw an opportunity. Montgomery Ward started advertising that their catalog was still printed on traditional, absorbent paper. They literally turned toilet paper quality into a marketing strategy. For a brief period in the late 1890s, there was an actual competition between catalog companies over whose pages were better for wiping your ass. American capitalism at its finest. Some families would keep old catalogs specifically for bathroom use and new catalogs for actual shopping. The old one would live in the outhouse, getting used page by page until it was gone. Then you'd graduate last season's catalog to the outhouse and keep the new one in the house. The chamber pot nightmare. In fancy frontier hotels that had chamber pots, someone had to empty them every morning. This was considered one of the absolute worst jobs in the West. A young woman who worked as a chambermaid in Abilene, Kansas in 1883 wrote about her experience. She'd have to carry dozens of full chamber pots down 3 flights of stairs every morning, being careful not to spill, then dump them all into a wagon that would haul the waste out of town. She wrote that the smell embedded itself in her clothes, her hair, her skin. No matter how much she washed, she couldn't get rid of it. People would avoid standing near her. She quit after 1 month and said she'd rather starve than do that job again. The men who drove the waste wagons out of town were paid relatively well because nobody else would do it. They were social outcasts, essentially, doing necessary work that everyone depended on but nobody respected. The cleaner way. Here's something interesting. Native American tribes had way better bathroom practices than white settlers. Most tribes had designated latrine areas that were always located away from water sources and living areas. Some would bury waste. Others had rotating systems where areas would be abandoned and left to decompose naturally before being used again years later. For cleaning, many tribes used water and sand, which was way more hygienic than the dry methods white settlers used. Some Plains tribes used dried buffalo chips as a last resort, but it wasn't preferred. The respect for water was huge in native cultures. Contaminating a stream wasn't just dumb, it was spiritually wrong. This meant their sanitation practices, while simple, were way more effective at preventing disease. White settlers could have learned from this. Instead, they dug their wells right next to their outhouses and wondered why everyone kept dying. Colonialism in action, folks. The prostitute problem. Saloons and brothels in frontier towns had some of the worst bathroom situations because of high traffic and lack of maintenance. One outhouse would service a saloon, a brothel, maybe a hotel, and a few other businesses. In summer, the smell near these outhouses was so bad that towns passed ordinances trying to regulate them. In Deadwood, South Dakota, the town council had a heated debate about whether outhouses should be required to be at least 50 feet from business entrances. 50 feet was considered too far for drunk customers to walk, so they compromised at 30 feet, meaning you could smell the outhouse from inside the saloon. Appetizing. Prostitutes had an especially hard time because they saw multiple clients per day and had no privacy or downtime. There are records of frontier prostitutes dying from infections and diseases at rates even higher than the already high frontier mortality rates. The turning point. Things started to slowly change in the late 1880s when germ theory became widely accepted. People finally understood that diseases came from contaminated water and poor sanitation, not from bad air or divine punishment. Towns started passing health codes. The Army developed regulations for latrine placement at forts. Indoor plumbing started appearing in fancy hotels and homes in major towns by the 1890s, though it would be decades before it became common in rural areas. Some frontier families didn't get indoor plumbing until the 1930s or 40s. Commercial toilet paper started being manufactured. The Scott Paper Company started selling toilet paper on a roll in 1890, marketing it as a sanitary health product, but it remained expensive, and catalog pages stayed the primary option for most people well into the 20th century. So here's the bottom line. Cowboys were tough, but not because they were good with guns or could ride horses. They were tough because they could handle primitive bathroom situations that would break most modern people mentally and physically. No toilet paper except corn cobs and catalog pages. No privacy, snakes in the outhouse, diseases from contaminated water, freezing cold in winter, unbearable heat and smell in summer, the constant threat of bears, spiders, and humiliation. And they did this every single day for months or years at a time while building the American West. The next time you're in a slightly dirty gas station bathroom and you're grossed out, remember this video. Remember the corn cobs. Remember the rattlesnakes. Remember the outlaw who got arrested with his pants down. Remember that going to the bathroom in the Wild West was genuinely dangerous and could kill you. The good old days weren't good when it came to bathrooms. They were absolutely terrible. And we should all be incredibly grateful that we live in an era where toilet paper is cheap, indoor plumbing is standard, and the biggest bathroom danger we face is someone not washing their hands. The Wild West was wild in a lot of ways, but the wildest thing might have been in how people maintained any dignity while dealing with bathroom situations that were straight out of a nightmare. So yeah, cowboys were badass. But not for the reasons Hollywood tells you. They were badass because they survived that.